Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to our series on the Home Depot guitar kit. This is an SG kit from Solo Music Gear, and I'm doing a little contest against BigDGuitars. So funny story, I actually filmed this intro already, and I showed how to remove the threaded inserts for your bridge and your tailpiece in case anybody doesn't know how to do that. And then in a moment of this kind of rare and inspiring brilliance, I accidentally deleted all that footage. So that's less than ideal. If you don't know how to do that, it's not daunting at all. Don't worry. I'm going to show you how to do it very easily using, go figure, all stuff that you can get at Home Depot in a video that will be coming out very soon, probably like literally a few days from now. So don't worry. If you've assembled your guitar or you want to assemble your guitar to test fit it and you're worried about being able to take it apart, very straightforward. Literally all you need is a screwdriver and a small bolt. I'll show you how to do that. Now, aside from that, let's cover what you need to know really quick in case you haven't had access to the internet for the last month. First of all, we're building an SG style guitar kit. It's from Solo Music Gear. There's a link to Solo Music Gear in the description if you want one. It's an affiliate link, my affiliate link. If you don't want to help me out by using my affiliate link to get one, then just go to solomusicgear.com. Problem solved. Second, this is a contest against BigDGuitars. His link is in the description. Check his channel out. Look at what he's doing with his so you can see how badly I beat him at said contest. If you would like to participate in the said contest, it's just for pride and bragging rights, but feel free to build a guitar kit of your own like this one using only materials and tools from Home Depot and Walmart and your average hardware store. No power tools allowed except for your soldering iron. And yeah, show us what you got. Are we on number 3 now? I think we're on number 3. Wait, we're not on number 3. There is no number 3. Now, we are going to go to the shop and do the fun part of this, the finishing work. And then after that, which for me is in like 5 seconds, we'll be back here to do the outro. I need to back up my footage. To the shop. So step 1 in the painting process for me after the sanding is generally tape. And the first thing I'm going to do on this one is tape off everything that I don't want to get paint on. I'm planning on doing a spray can job for this, so particularly when you're spraying paint, you got to realize that excess paint is going to go on everything, and anything that you don't want paint on, you should be adding tape to. For that reason, I go ahead and I tape off the pickup cavities because I'd rather not get tape on them, and I use a razor blade to trim anything that's sticking out above them so that I don't interfere with any of my paint work as I go. I make sure I tape off the fretboard in specific because I'm going to be finishing the neck afterward. Now, granted, I'm not spraying the neck, so you'll see me tape off the neck after I do this, but I go ahead and pre-tape the fretboard because after this I'm going to be putting a hand-applied polyurethane finish on the back of the neck, and I want to be prepared for that in advance. Again, cavities, I like to tape them off because often you're going to want to put something conductive in them, like a conductive paint or tin foil you can use with an adhesive, or you can use a copper foil tape, which is probably the best method from a quality perspective. You do that so that you can avoid having any excess noise. You create basically a Faraday cage around your electronics to the extent that you can to avoid any buzzing. Anyway, I tape off the cavities. I go ahead and ball up some tape and put that into the bridge post area and the tailpiece post area to make sure I don't get excess paint built up in there. Then I tape off my control cavity kind of just by putting a piece of tape behind all the holes so paint doesn't go through the holes into the cavity. And finally, I tape off the cavity itself and run a razor blade around the end, or the edges rather, after kind of using my thumb to burnish it into the corners. And that protects my control plate cavity so it doesn't get smaller as a result of added paint and make it more difficult for me to add the cover on there after. And now, redundant though it may seem, I'm going to go ahead and tape off the neck. This again is because I want to keep kind of a natural looking finish on the neck, and I'm going to do that by hand with a hand rubbed polyurethane finish. Very straightforward process. It'll be very easy for you to see how to do that, but the gist of it is I don't want my spray paint to go on there. So I tape that off, I go around the headstock, and you just carefully apply your tape so that it matches up with the edge, and then it's easy to clean off and you end up with a nice tight line after. So I'm doing that around the headstock, and that's essentially the same thing I would do if I were just painting the front of a body. I'm going to spray paint the face of the headstock rather, but I'm not going to do that with the rest of it. The rest of it's going to get the same finish as the neck. Because this is a set neck kit and I've glued it on, I can't use my usual spray stand that I've got set up for those bolt-on necks. So what I do instead here, I'm using a paint booth. Obviously you don't need one, but this is just going to suck some paint, even though the filters clearly need to be changed in this thing. So this is going to keep the room kind of freer of paint. But in any event, if you're doing this in your garage or whatever, what I've done is I've screwed in a little hook into the strap button position there, the hole that I pre-drilled for that, and I'm just hanging this in front of my spray booth so that it'll be easier for me to spray. Now I have done this before, hanging the guitar from a tuning peg hole, but this is obviously a preferable method. You hang it right from the bottom and then nothing's in the way, and you don't have to worry about painting around a hook or some nonsense like that. Now I'm going in with a flat black primer. I'm using exclusively just, inexpensive Rust-Oleum paints from Home Depot for this spray paint portion of this paint job. So the flat black primer is because I'm doing a black background for my paint job. You can also use a gray primer. You can use a red oxide primer. It really doesn't matter all that much. But this way I won't have to add yet another layer of paint in order to get the black background that I'm looking for. So I end up going with the flat black primer, and that kind of just saves me a step and reduces the amount of paint overall that I have to use. The more that you can reduce the number of layers that you have, the less you're running into opportunities for product failure. So to the extent that you can do that, it's usually helpful. Now most of you have seen me apply a coat of paint before, but you can see how I'm doing this. I'm overlapping the paint stream, the paint stroke, by approximately 50% as I go. It's pretty warm in the shop, so it's drying pretty quickly, but I just go in straight lines, and then at some point I'm going to go in vertical lines. I don't believe I filmed that. That was on my third coat out of 3 that I did that. I switched the direction around to make sure that everything was even. But yeah, you just overlap by about 50%. Here, I'm not really watching the camera, so I thought in order to give you a different angle, I would just switch hands. But again, it's the same thing. As you move further away from the piece with the can, you move a little bit slower. If you're getting really close, you got to move a little bit quicker. But either way, you're looking to overlap your stroke by about 50% and put on kind of a medium, slightly wet coat. If you put your primer on too heavily, you may notice that it'll crack, and that's obviously something that you want to avoid. For some reason, there's a misconception that you need to apply your primer really thick. Primer in and of itself is a little thicker than normal paint, generally has a slightly higher viscosity, but that doesn't mean that you need to apply it really thick. Sometimes you need a thicker nozzle to be able to spray it if you're using a spray gun, but again, doesn't necessarily mean that you need to put more on. So if you apply it slightly thinner and put an extra coat or two, that's going to be a safer method, and you're going to be able to avoid that extra potential of it cracking or something like that. Now when you're applying a black on black like I'm doing here, or any other color on top of itself, it gets a little more difficult to be able to tell what your coverage is looking like and how even your coat is. To that, I say it doesn't matter as much. The objective here is to get an even coat, of course, but the predominant objective is to get it on there so that it looks nice and even and you have even coverage. So if you're in a position where you can't tell if there's even coverage because your last coat had even coverage, that's not the end of the world. When all's said and done, you've kind of hit your primary objective anyway, and now you're mostly just going for a little bit of added paint buildup and thickness so that you can sand it lightly a couple days from the time that you apply it, or a couple weeks depending on how you choose to approach it, and not have to worry about sanding through. So all in all, this looked pretty even after the first coat, and I was really happy with how it looked at the end. Now it's time to move on to the fun part. Okay, I'm not sure if this is the part where I should apologize to Big D for how bad I'm about to make him look or what. So in truly non-Canadian fashion, I'm just not going to bother. This, my friends, is the fun part. We are now going to paint the front of this guitar. Because of the ridiculous plan that I've got for finishing this thing, I'm going to do the front first, then a layer of clear coat, and then the back. You'll see. So let's talk about what you're going to need for this specific finish. A bunch of paint. A bunch. You'll have to pick your colors. I'm using blue and green for kind of an earthy look. I'm using gray and white for kind of a moon kind of look. I think maybe you can see where I'm going with this. Always good to have some clear handy in case you need to re-wet something. Again, maybe you can see where I'm going with this. and you need black and white in any event to pull your highlights. This part is going to take a little bit of hand skill, but it's fine. It's not that complicated. You need to have a mask anytime you're spraying anything. You can get these at Home Depot, obviously. You can get all of the paints here that I'm using. These are all just Rust-Oleum 2X Painter's Touch type paints, all at Home Depot as well. In fact, that is where I got them, as you know. You're gonna want some gloves. These are just cheap gloves. I bought a box of 100 for, a few bucks. Go figure, Home Depot. And then our Walmart piece on this one, I have the lid from a coffee container with a little piece of painter's tape on the back. Fuzz everywhere. And 2 lids from, I believe, yogurt containers, also with little pieces of painter's tape folded on the back so that they're easy to lift up. There is a 30% chance that I mangle this beyond all recognition and have to start over. The last thing you're going to need is something to do your texture work with. Newspaper works, magazines work. I'm trying to be efficient here, so I have the Home Depot bags that all my stuff came in. So in case this isn't really making sense to you yet, we're doing a space theme paint job on the front of this. We're doing something else entirely on the back. But yeah, it's going to be a space painting type thing. There are lots of good tutorials out there by other people, tons of them, on how to do these space painting type things with spray cans. So feel free to go check those out. You can learn a lot about how to do all sorts of cool stuff, waterfalls, mountains, trees, all sorts of cool stuff using spray cans and various other random implements. I'm going to kind of just do a very basic space painting theme on this one, but you'll get the gist of how it works. And of course, if you're looking for a more definitive guide on how to do that style of painting, either check out some of those other videos or let me know. And if enough people want kind of a more thorough tutorial on that sort of paint job, I can do that. That's not a problem. All right, let's get started. We'll move back into voiceover so I can protect my lungs here. And yeah, I should probably plan something properly. But anyway, let's make this look interesting, shall we? I'll let you guys decide if interesting ends up being the correct word for this, but in any event, make sure you have gloves if you're going to be doing this spray painting type of work. You are going to get paint on your hands. In fact, sometimes you do so deliberately. My first step here is I just kind of map out what I'm looking for a little bit. Granted, I didn't really plan this ahead very well, but still, it's good to have kind of a layout. And then I just gently, very gently mist a little bit of a different color on here. For me, it's gray that I'm putting on because I don't want a very stark contrast. And you can see when I pull these off, it gives me kind of a map of where I'm going, so I don't end up shooting a whole bunch of excess paint all over the place. I can concentrate it a little bit to the areas that it's needed. So first off, I want that bigger one to be a planet, and I want it to be, a blue and green type planet because it makes sense to me that it's those colors. So I go ahead and apply those colors, and then I use my texturing item here, which happens to be a Home Depot bag, to get a little bit of a planet texture. I lay it on there, pull it off, gives me a light texture, and then I kind of pat it for a little extra. And then I have to pull my shadows and my highlights in order to give it some three-dimensional look so it doesn't just look like a textured circle. You do that with that white and black to kind of make it look like, a star. Maybe the sun, for example, is shining on it from one direction. And then I go in and put the black back around most of it so that, it looks like it's floating in outer space and not exploding or something ridiculous like that. In case you were wondering, I have forgotten to put in the highlights and shadows before, and it looks ridiculous. So make sure you do that step. Next up, what I want here is kind of a moon that's partially hidden behind it, which is why I did the earthy looking planet first. Then I'm using a similar technique for the moon, except I've done it in gray and white, and I've made sure that there's a little bit of a wet black background in there that allows me to kind of do a little texturing with the black. Now, because I said I wanted it behind there, I also want the shadow from the planet going onto the moon, so I do this thin kind of black line around it. That's a stiff shadow, if you will, a hard shadow coming off the planet onto the moon. And then that creates my three-dimensionality as well, and all I had to do there was put in the highlight. Now carefully, without spraying under this thing because it's sitting on top of the other stencil, I create my black area around that, so again it doesn't look like the moon is exploding and shooting moon particles all over the place, and I go ahead and do another one, because why would you want only one moon? Several moons are better than one, right? I guess. maybe. A little bit of texture gets added because a smooth planet would be, I guess, weird and counter to what I learned in grade 4. And again, our three-dimensionality goes on and we use our stencil. And now we can just black out the rest of space because, space is utter darkness. This is oddly sciencey for a paint job and not chemistry. So I'm not really sure what to tell you here. Hopefully you remember to buy your passes for the Magic School Bus and, we'll get through this. Now, there are a lot of additional techniques you can do after this. I've gone in and blacked out the background, and what I'm doing is spraying a little bit of white kind of upward over it so it mists on there to create a bit of a galaxy look. And now I'm literally spraying white onto my fingers and flicking it at the guitar. So I test flick a couple of them to the side to make sure I'm not going to create a huge spatter. And then, I flick them at the guitar, and this creates the starry background, if you will. You want to have some stars in space, obviously. There are a bunch of additional techniques you can do here using folded paper and stuff to create shooting stars and things of that nature. I'm not doing any of those on this one. This isn't really a space painting tutorial, obviously. What I'm doing is just creating a simple space look. And when I lift these up, you can see that I've managed to create kind of that three-dimensional look by highlighting one side and creating a shadow on the other. And frankly, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. What do you guys think of it? Let me know in the comments below. And, once again, Big D, good luck. I hope you've got something up your sleeve. All right, welcome back to the corner of my garage. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the painting portion of the video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. In the next one, we're going to put the finish on the back and hopefully the neck, do some clear coat work, maybe do the headstock. We got lots to do. So that's coming up soon. Stay tuned, stick around. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see the rest of what I do to this guitar, and check out Big D Guitars' channel so you can see how bad I kick his butt. It's extra funny because in his last thumbnail, he put, "Are we modeling or building guitars?" And I wonder if his next one will be another list of things that I would beat him at. Now that I've gone there, see you next time.